Now I invite you to share with us your experience and whatever you will want to share with us, because we are sure that everything will be useful for us and for everybody.
Me too. I'm sure it will be a very, very nice learning journey for all of us. I'm just sharing my screen, and right now you can see the storytelling for intercultural trainers and coaches. Can you see it?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay. So it's February 13th, and as you might know, 13th is the bad luck culture, intensive number.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, there are missing 13 floors in different buildings. There is no 13th row on the planes. So it's also kind of storytelling. This is what I would like to start with, that people love giving narratives to different events, different symbols, different signs. And I know in Italy it's the number 17.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, in China
especially it's 17. We'll find it in Friday as day of the week. Friday 17 is something that,
exactly. And in China it's 4. So it's also culture based, and this is also the reason why I would like to make storytelling even more popular in the intercultural field. It's being used in many, many fields, in the narrative therapy, in coaching, in marketing. Obviously, we are kind of bombarded with this buzzword. What is really close to my heart is storytelling in the intercultural field, and I would like to share with you why.
okay.
Because, before I do it, I would like to encourage everyone to think of these 4 questions, because I have been introduced by you, Michaela, in such a beautiful way, and it would be really lovely if also people who are listening to us have got the chance to shortly introduce themselves. And here are the guiding questions. Where you are from and where you are right now. Where were who were your main influencers? What are you curious about? And what made you join this webinar? So just to show you that it can be very, very short and simple, or sweet and simple, as the US Americans say. I come originally from Poland. I'm based in Germany. My main influencers regarding storytelling are definitely people here in the field, in the Sietar community, like George Simons, but also Tyagi, with his fantastic ideas how to apply storytelling in the interactive way. And obviously people from my Beyond Storytelling network and beyond, just like Mary Alice Arthur or Shanae Swart from South Africa. But my really main influencers are my children. They are the best storytellers. And they are really so curious and so magic with their stories. And it's always fun to listen to them, to play also with stories, to jungle with stories. And this is what is very, very enriching. I'm really curious about the future of education, especially the intercultural education, because we've been staying at the cognitive level for a very, very long time, maybe a little bit too long. This is also something I would like to address in my presentation. And what made you join this webinar? It was Michaela who made me join it with her charm and persistence. I'm very grateful, and thank you for the invitation. Right now it's your turn, dear audience. Please write down in the chat window your 4 short answers. So where you are from, who are your main influencers, what are you curious about, and what made you join this webinar?
We are waiting for the answers.
For everybody who is new to the Zoom, the chat window is a symbol down and in the bottom of your screen, and you can...
Well, Joanna, can you see the answers? Because there are people answering. From Albania, it's Gradiola, Los Angeles.
Wow. And
well, they are Javier Siriani. I am from Buenos Aires.
right.
Influencer, photographers, doctors, curious about digital world, education, and I joined because I'm studying and teach about storytelling.
Okay, great.
Patrick Boylan, Shakespeare. A friend, my son, Richard, as a kid, life, why people do they do communication technique? Gradiola, curious about the living the life to the fullest, and I joined the webinar for the lovely and highly professional presenter and the interesting topic. Louise Goodman, I think it's something, okay. Storytelling is very much used in business communication, just curious. This was the answer from Louise Goodman.
Okay, thank you.
Well, the people are curious about literature, about storytelling as well. There are people teaching about storytelling. Javier Suriani.
Great.
And Lizzie Beza, I'm from Chile, but located right now in Edmonton, Canada. My main influencers are Milton and Janet Bennett.
Yes.
I'm an intercultural trainer and want to incorporate more storytelling in my facilitation.
Yes, great. Just building on Milton Bennett, because he's obviously one of the founding fathers of intercultural communication worldwide. And, you know, he is very, let's say, pro storytelling because it corresponds also with the constructive approach. Yeah, we are constructing our reality, which means that we are also co-creating and creating stories. And right now, in this moment of time, we are so aware of the power of stories that we know that there are some stories that are worn off and we need to abandon them. There are some stories that can be re-narrated, and there are some stories that have to be told in the completely new way. And we need also new stories, just like we need new institutions for our earth, so that we as human beings are able to keep living safely on this planet. So just to show you shortly what we are going to focus on. There are so many definitions for storytelling that I would like to focus on it at a later point. Right now, I'm willing to focus on this question, why actually storytelling and why now? And then to move to the questions, how storytelling works, what actually is the influence of storytelling on our brain, and of course, what it actually means for intercultural practitioners. In the last section, we are going to focus on storytelling in the intercultural field, and I've got for you also some takeaways. The first one was already the introduction with the backstory, which is a very, very lovely method when you are facilitating also bigger groups, because when you ask people to exchange these short 4 stories within like 3 minutes per person, you can be sure that the atmosphere is changing within seconds. It's a very, very good icebreaker. Then I would like to show you also an open-end story technique, one storytelling technique from the narrative coaching, and story canvas last but not least. So as you see, we've got quite a lot to do.
Really interesting things, yeah.
So whenever you've got questions, you are very welcome to ask the questions in the chat box. I'm not able to see the chat box, so Michaela, I would like to ask you to read the chat questions for me if something appears. Otherwise, we are having time also at the end of the presentation of this webinar also to answer some questions. So let's get started.
Okay.
Once upon a time, which was a very, very long time ago actually, in the Middle East, in Baghdad, there was a very cruel ruler. He was a sultan who wanted to marry the most beautiful wife in the whole country. And when a beautiful girl was introduced to him, he immediately decided to marry her, spent a wedding night with her, and ordered to kill her the next morning. Exactly the same fate faced the next wife, also a young, beautiful woman, the next one, and the following one. This vicious circle got broken when a young woman called Scheherazade decided to get introduced to this sultan and told all the advisors at the court that she's also ready to marry him. The ruler married Scheherazade, and on the wedding night, she started to tell him a story. She kept telling this story, however, she didn't tell it to the end. She interrupted and asked him for patience and promised to finish the story the next night. So what actually happened? The ruler decided to give it a chance and to wait the whole day, the whole evening. The next night, she finished her story and started a new one. And this is how she proceeded 1001 nights in a row. Because of Scheherazade, we've got currently, nowadays, not only this set of beautiful stories from the Middle East. Because of her, we've got also a very powerful story of persistence, of love, of showing that with stories you can change a human being. You can change someone's attitude. You can change someone's life. And because of storytelling, you can reach someone not only at the cognitive level, so that this person gets to know something new, but also at the emotional level. And this is exactly the secret of the buzzword in our uncertain, ambiguous times. In our times, when businesses and organizations struggle so much to have their voices heard in this very overcrowded space, What we are facing is the increase in content, and we see it everywhere. We see it in the streets, we see it in the newspapers, in media, obviously on the internet. Cisco has published this survey that by 2020, so actually by next year, 70% of the world mobile data traffic will be video. So we are going to be really bombarded by pictures and video, movies, more and more, which means that we have to struggle to select this piece of information which is really relevant, important to us. On the other hand side, we observe decrease in users' attention. We cannot actually concentrate longer than 8 seconds, accordingly to the survey of Microsoft. So in this space where everybody is fighting for our attention, you can see that data and facts don't work anymore. People don't trust. People don't want to save this huge amount of information anymore. Storytelling seems to be a kind of answer what to do next, so that we don't forget our human nature, because this is really in our DNA. It is an engaging and dynamic form of interpersonal communication. But we need to be obviously also aware of the fact that storytelling includes not only this what is told, but also this what has been forgotten, maybe this what is kept in silence on purpose, and maybe also things that can be seen from completely different perspectives. And especially in the intercultural field, we need to be aware of the danger of a single story. And this is the title of a very, very good TED Talk by Chimamanda Adichie you can find online, which is really overwhelming regarding the aspect of dignity and respect, which is really important with storytelling. I would like to focus also on two additional aspects, because it's not only about, let's say, us as intercultural practitioners telling stories, and also let's say using this old kind of sometimes stories just like critical incidents, but also how we can work with stories. There is the so-called story facilitation or story work, where we can encourage also our participants to work with their own stories and to share their stories so that they can enhance each other's perception of cultures, and also obviously expand their own understanding of their own cultural influences. And last but not least, the narrative coaching, so the storytelling coaching that lives from telling, retelling, interpreting, and obviously reinterpreting stories. And I'm going to give you one tool a little bit later. The most important thing about storytelling is actually not telling per se, but story listening. Because what happens in our communities, in our families, in our organizations, workplace? We listen to someone with intention to react immediately, to respond, to react, to be able to say something wiser, funnier, whatever. But very, very seldom we meet people who really listen to at all the three levels. So listen to the content, listen to the person to figure out his or her emotions, and also what is the reason why he or she is telling a story. And here I would like to introduce you to a very beautiful Chinese sign that stands for storytelling. It's called Ting. And you can see that we actually listen to different stories, not only with ears, but also with King, which stands for the mind, so for the brain, with 10 eyes, so we should be also good observers, so that we focus, which means that we can concentrate also what the other person is saying. And last but not least, listening to the other person with the heart, so with empathy. So this is the challenge of our 21st century right now. Yeah, in this really crowded world, crowded through pieces of information, that we slow down, take our time to listen to different stories for better understanding. And here you can see that actually this is the secret of storytelling, that we trust what people say when we listen to them at these three levels, when we empathize with their emotions, and even if it cannot be measured, it cannot be validated empirically, we still have faith that this story sharing, brings all of us forward. And the secrets reside in the right brain. So here I would like to give you a little bit of input on the neuroscience of storytelling, because it's really interesting what actually happens in the story listener's brain. When we listen to facts and data, our rational brain, so our neocortex, which is responsible for talking, thinking, moving, creating, and learning, gets activated all the time. When we have the chance to listen to this data and facts embedded in the story, and the story is also triggering different emotions, the possibility that we are going to recall this story and we are going to remember this facts and data is much, much higher, because not only the rational brain, but also the emotional brain, so our limbic system, responsible for feelings, for remembering and interaction with others, gets activated. So this is something that marketeers found out long time ago, and something that we can use in the intercultural communication in a very good, interesting way. So whenever the brain detects an emotionally charged event, these parts of limbic system, amygdala and hippocampus, get immediately stimulated. That is the reason why skillfully used images, descriptions of events involving our senses and emotions will be remembered much better than a chain of abstract concepts without any story behind. Hippocampus gets involved, which is responsible for formation of memories, and also amygdala, responsible for formation of emotions. One more magic action takes place during story sharing, storytelling. Mirror neurons get activated, and our brain can be really as brightful when we listen to stories that trigger also our positive emotions. And it has been proved that there is kind of tuning between the storyteller and the story listener because of this activating of mirror neurons. So whenever the person tells us the story about, for example, eating a yummy cookie put to the fantastic cappuccino in the fresh air in the middle of Milan. Yeah. And you know, smelling the breeze of air. Exactly, this sensory centers get motivated in our brain. So we are co-creators of these stories. And this is co-creators in our brain, so to say. We perceive the story with really all our senses when we listen to it. And this is also the point why it's so important, also in the intercultural learning, to switch from this old, worn off, as you see here, methods, to give people more and more data and more facts, just like feeding them with the books, like in the 19th century, one of these used futures, and to incorporate more and more story sharing in our programs, intercultural programs. You have already seen, so that people have got the chance to build community, so that they've got the chance to get curious, so that they've got the chance to learn something new, but really with all the senses, not only just trying to perceive this loads of information at the cognitive level. And this is the reason why it's so important to add to our trainer or subject expert role other teaching roles. Of course, we are the evaluator. We need to tell the human resources or also people at the university where we are teaching how this intercultural programs came across. But what is also important is the focus on the learner and on action. And this is what we can reach with coaching. And the focus on the learner and on the knowledge, this is what we can reach with facilitation. Facilitation, just shortly speaking, introduction of methods like World Cafe, open space, activating the collective intelligence so that people are learning from each other and not necessarily learning from us as a subject expert. It's also important. However, as you see in this model by Passarelli and Kolb, it's just one of the roles we are having. And in all these roles, we can incorporate stories. We can be a storyteller, we can be a story facilitator. It's just a matter of different methods and actually this narrative approach, just this faith that sharing different stories enhances the development on intercultural sensitivity. You can imagine that it's getting pretty tricky, especially in the moment when I mentioned the mirror neurons. Because of course, for someone who has never been to Milan, it's pretty tricky to imagine the taste of this cappuccino and this cookie. Let's say it's panettone, so a bigger piece of cake, and the air. And obviously we are perceiving different stories through our cultural glasses, through our cultural experience. And this is the tricky part about storytelling. Every story delivers a context so that your facts slide into new slots in your listeners' brains. So if you don't give them a new story, they will simply slide new facts into old slots. And this is why it's so tricky in the intercultural context. Just to give you a nice example, there was a German manager who relocated to Mexico. And he was very, very into being the, greatest manager one can imagine, was doing his best, nevertheless was focusing a lot on introducing European, or better say, German standards over there. So you can imagine he was not really delighted when people didn't appear on time, or they left a little bit later or earlier, whenever he was really fixed to the agenda. And all in all, he felt really miserable, more and more separated from his team, misunderstood. And on one day, when he entered his office, he saw a sugar skull on his desk. And it was the moment when he said, "Oh no, they cannot stand me. It's getting really dangerous to stay here." He had no idea that he entered his office shortly before the so-called Dia de los Muertos, so the 1st of November, where the people in Mexico are exchanging these sugar skulls and different symbols of death just to celebrate the 1st of November. So, when you put this old information to this old, or let's say new information in this case, to the old slots, this is what can happen. This is why it's also part of our responsibility to work a lot with stories, so that our participants have got a better feeling for what's going on in different cultures, so that they get to know a little bit more of the context. And I assume I started very similarly, like many in our field, that I was working a lot with cultural dimensions. This is also what different companies were promoting. And in the meantime, it's not the point that I'm not mentioning the dimensions. I'm working more and more with cultural values. But nevertheless, whenever I introduce terms like hierarchy, dealing with time perception, I bring stories, or I encourage people to share stories, because there's different forms of, for example, time perception can be best grabbed really during story sharing, and not during, jangling with abstract terms. And this is what I would like to show you as one of the narrative coaching methods. Because, this was the example from Mexico when something didn't work. And in the intercultural programs, people pretty often concentrate on things that don't work. When we try to make them focus on this, what actually does work, how it influences also their self-esteem, how it influences their readiness to share also stories of success across cultures. So here you've got 3 questions, or let's say 2 questions, and the first sentence telling you that the participant should share a real and recent story that happened in his or her current job, that illustrates something that she values in his work. What is there in this story that is particularly precious to you? And what are the values and commitments behind? You cannot imagine what happens when people have got the chance to work with such powerful stories. You yourself, you can think of a story right now, a short story, when something that is valuable happened in your work. And what was particularly precious to you in this moment and what the values are behind. This is really, really powerful. It gives you a kick to offer intercultural programs, trainings, coachings in the next 10, 15 years. Later on, you can get other storytelling tools. The point is, who could you empower with your story? And it's just that, we pretty often say, oh, yeah, nobody really says so, it's kind of taboo. In our field, such taboo things are definitely religion, are sometimes gender themes. It depends on different factors, but whenever we share a story which emotionally triggers our participants, magic can happen, and people are trying or are opening themselves much, much more, and they can learn from this experience much better way. So think of a story that is really important to you. Maybe one story that you keep telling in different programs, or maybe you simply keep telling in the intercultural field when you are with people from different cultures, and how and who you could empower with this story. This is really a very, very powerful question. It happened to me once in a very intense way, that I had a very mixed group of students at the university where I'm teaching. And there were people from China, Russia, from several European countries, and one of them also, let's say, not existing countries like Kurdistan. And one of the countries was Bosnia-Herzegovina and Kosovo. And there was one girl who said, oh, all this story sharing and intercultural exchange, it's great, and so on and so forth. However, there are some limits. I cannot imagine to talk to anyone from Serbia. And I was speechless. I was speechless. It was our second day, and she was really tough about it. And the only explanation I had for myself was that she must have gone through a big trauma. So I actually asked her, where are you from? Could you remind me, please? And she said, yes, I'm from this corner of ex-Yugoslavia. And I said, yes, where exactly from? And she responded what I actually already thought, Srebrenica. So the town that was completely destroyed, and so many people lost their lives over there, also her family. So, sometimes we release in people a process of reconciliation, and we don't even know. It's very painful, it's very long lasting, but it can be a beginning. Later on, I had the chance to talk to her a little bit. I wouldn't like to repeat everything what happened, but we have to be also aware of the fact that whenever we invite people to share their stories, then we automatically create this atmosphere to allow vulnerability. And of course, in this case, we are responsible for everything what happens. So why storytelling in the intercultural field? There were so many, so many hints, so many ideas. What are your ideas? Could you please write in the chat window, why do you think it works in the intercultural field?
I'm trying to write down that. Right. Okay. To truly remember, Catherine Ragnan.
Yeah. Any other?
Solicit different perspectives.
Okay,
Elizabeth Abbott.
great. Yeah, great. Any other ideas?
To make people open, oh, wow, to connect to the consciousness of now moment. Storytelling gives the possibility to tell about yourself, a value in a simple way.
Yeah,
Culture, it's Marilu Castellano. Every culture has its own way of doing things, but a story is a story everywhere, and that's how you can make a link with any different culture.
yeah,
And because by creating analogies through a story, you show how another person acts in circumstances similar to your client's circumstances. You can give non-directive advice to connect to values or morals within a story to link to cultural perspectives.
hmm.
For intercultural understanding and intercultural sensitivity.
Yes, thank you. Fantastic, fantastic answers. I have, I
To
have got,
make people open and share their thoughts.
yeah,
This was another answer. Grazia Gellini can be a great tool to empower those who feel disempowered.
wow, it's very, very important. And this is also important for us as facilitators and trainers who are dealing with bigger groups, that we are responsible for giving voice to everyone. Yeah, so it's our responsibility that all the voices get heard. This is also something which is really, really important. And I know that people are talking about storytelling methods or storytelling tools a lot. I have to admit, me too, I get tempted from time to time. Nevertheless, the storytelling is really an approach. Yeah, it's really the whole narrative approach. And in the intercultural field, I decided to use this sentence by Jerome Brunner, the cultural psychologist, who says culture is a set of stories that we enter as the basic of this narrative approach. Because this is exactly the point. When we enter this set of stories and we listen to them and we are listening for understanding and not listening for reacting, and listening with empathy, it's a huge enrichment. We can really detect completely new worlds, completely new cultures. So I wouldn't really reduce it only to just story methods. It's more. And with this, I would like to uh, invite you to ask questions, to give comments, and yes, before we can move to the last section of the webinar, it would be nice to hear your perspective, your questions.
Well, for the moment, I don't see any other question or comments.
Okay, okay. So then I still have the promised tools for you. And this comparison of the storytelling with a journey, because as you can imagine, during such a journey, people not only detect new cultures, they also discover their own cultural values. Yeah? Whenever they listen to different stories from different other cultures. And this is what is so magic about us human beings, and where we have got definitely much, much more to say than artificial intelligence everybody is talking about right now. Storytelling is obviously the power of curiosity. It's definitely the power of perspective change. You have mentioned also in the chat window. And here I've got this one chart where I couldn't resist putting simply lots of text so that we've got a little bit of, let's say, summary of what we have been talking about in the intercultural field. Because it is an eye-opener to this world of obviousness, that we start to question our world of obviousness, that we are starting to talk about multicultural identities and shift away from this national assignments all the time. Of course, self-reflection, personal development. Of course, empathy and perspective change. Very, very interesting use of storytelling methods to deal with new stories of belonging. So while working with migrants and refugees, it enhances the out-of-box thinking. It initiates change processes, and last but not least, it moves hearts.
And in relation to this, we've got a question from Grazia. How can we handle negative comments like your Chinese about Kosovo? I had a similar one from a Syrian talking about not wanting to talk to Russian. And another question, have you experienced telling different voices on the same event or getting the different voices heard? Another question, do you always tell stories to clients or get them to tell theirs?
Yeah, very good questions. So first, answer to Grazia. Grazie for this question. Yes, it's very tangible and very important to react immediately. The reaction is sometimes, you know, depending on the day. Yeah? Not every day you are really this person who is rescuing the world. But sometimes I simply say, okay, what would happen if you talked to this person and you found this person really, really interesting, fantastic, inspiring, without really knowing, that he or she is from the country you have any bias towards. Yeah? And this is exactly this re-narrating. When the person says, yes, if I hadn't known that, then everything would be okay. And you know, this is this magic question, magic answer, that it opens the possibility to say, yes, so what hinders you to look at this person through all the other lenses except for this national lens, as a human being who is enriching your life? Yeah. So this is, of course, very, very tricky, because sometimes, yes, you cannot really predict the reaction. And the second question was,
Have you experienced telling different voices on the same event or getting the different voices heard?
yeah, yeah. It can be also pretty challenging. It happened to me once when I was facilitating World Cafe for Stories for Europe. It was an event in a very, very international setting. And there was one participant who was against the idea of the European Union. And during the World Cafe, people were supposed to create a collage, kind of poster, very, very colorful, about all the aspects of life in Europe. And he took a black pencil and colored half of this poster black. And he said that he doesn't see anything positive about living in the European Union. So what actually happened was, when the groups presented their posters, this person who was presenting from his group covered this black part of the poster and didn't want to show it. And me as a facilitator, I felt kind of urged to react, and I said, wait a second, could you please unfold this poster? Because this is also part of the reception in the group. So, you know, it didn't change so much. The only thing it changed was that this participant who was in favor of coloring this poster half black saw that we respect his voice even if we don't accept this opinion. And sometimes it's enough. Sometimes it's really enough, because then his voice was really heard. But you are right, it's very, very challenging. There was one more question.
Do you always tell stories to clients or get them to tell
Oh
their?
yeah, both.
This was Patrick Boylan. Yes.
Actually, I always encourage people to share their stories as well. Yeah, yeah. Because this is what is so fantastic, that you have the chance to get to know another person better way.
Okay. No more questions. Just Louise sent a message to say hello to you. She has to leave the session.
Oh yeah, because we are already at
Yeah.
6 o'clock, and this is also my very last chart with this free, let's say, ABC of storytelling, which I would like to give you as a takeaway. The authenticity, building relationships, and courage to be vulnerable and share your own stories. This is exactly what storytelling is about, so that you still rest tuned with your listeners, and you got the chance and you use this chance to build good relationships. This is also what is fantastic about working with stories.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you,
Thank you
Anya.
very much. Thank you very, very much. For everybody who is interested in getting to know more, I would like to invite you to contact the website, Intercultural Compass. I hope to see many of you in Belgium, where I'm also offering a workshop on storytelling, where I'm going to talk about different methods, and the pre-congress workshop over there on designing a learning journey with learning battle cards and storytelling. So it's also, yeah, nice.
Very interesting and curious, and tools to arouse the interest and the curious in people.
Yeah, yeah,
Because as you told us, there are some problems. Not all people are willing to open
yeah,
to the other, even they have their own story. But
exactly.
uh, especially in circumstances of conflict, probably they have difficulties to open up.
Yeah, yeah, it's so true.
Yes. And
Hmm.
you said before, we must be a good listener.
Yes,
A storyteller needs a good listener.
good listening skills, definitely. Yeah, yeah. So this is what I would like to wish you from the bottom of my heart.
Oh, thank you.
All of
Joanna,
us.
there are a lot of people who are thinking to you, uh, all the attendees, which was 23 attendees in this moment. Thank you very much. The
Thank you.
slides and the presentation was really interesting, and great webinar, great presentation, very interesting. Do you have any books to suggest to deeply know intercultural storytelling?
Yes, I can recommend you two books. I'm just having um, maybe you can put in the chat window, because still I don't have access to the
Yes.
chat window. These two books, Beyond Storytelling and
Okay.
Storytelling by Anika Shach, Schach. So the first one, Beyond Storytelling by Jacques Lobczyk, where my chapter on storytelling in intercultural communication got published. It was published 2017 in English, and the other one is in German. And this year there is a new book, Transforming Organizations, also about narrative approach, and I'm writing over there a chapter on dealing with time across cultures in global times.
Wow. So we will be reading it. As soon as the book will be available, of
Yes,
course.
yes, yes. So I'm also looking forward to it.
Okay.
Thank you
So
very
thank you, Joanna. It was a pleasure to have you, and it was really interesting to know from your experience and from all the important things that you wanted to share with us about
much.
storytelling, and also about the how to build authentic relationships.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank
Thank
you for
you.
the invitation. Thank you
And
for having me.
thank you to all attendees. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for your fantastic questions, wonderful observations, your comments, and your time. Time is, except for storytelling, something which is very precious nowadays.
Oh, yes.
The best present we can give to each other.
Yes, this is the reason why we appreciated you.
Thank you so much.
And we hope that this webinar will be the beginning of our future collaboration. And we wait you in Milan for in-person event. Why not? And we look forward to seeing also our attendees
Okay.
in Milan, in Italy as well.
Yes. And
Okay.
see you in Belgium.
Okay, see you. And thanks again. Thanks to you all.
Thank you. Take
Thank
care.
you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Joanna.